Time for another end table. This end table is going to have a brown top, brown bottom, black frame, like in this picture. So what I did first, these are the legs. It's going to be 18 by 18, 23 inches tall. These are going to be the legs of it. I've 2x4s. I have cut them on the table saw, cut the edges, around the edges off. So I had to slice those off. These will be the supports that go across the bottom and the top on the sides. And this is also going to have the X design on them. I'll take 2x4s also, and I'll rip them in half and create my X designs. But first I'll build the frame. Got these things sanded. But first I use the, I'm sanding them with a 60 grit. It gets to knock off some of this rough wood, and then I'm gonna go back over them with the 120 grit, and then I'll start piecing them together. All right, now I got the ends that are gonna have the X marks on them cut and are in place. And if you look on top, they're all connected with pocket hole screws. Down below here too, pocket hole screws. So what I do now is I'll get a 2x4 and lay it under this. And I do this, I've shown this before in videos, but I'll mark it to cut the X marks out and get that measured up, and then I'll be ready to piece the sides on. All right, now that I got my X's cut on the chop saw, miter saw, these fit pretty good. Hardly too much of a gap, not too bad of a gap. Of course, I'll caulk those up before I paint it. But that is the side view. X is in place. Ready to do the other side. All right, what happens here is I'm at the table upside down now. I flipped it around so I can screw in the bottom leg, the top brace with the pocket holes. So it's just like a puzzle. Pieces fit right in there. And I'll do the same here at the top, which is actually the bottom. I'll do the same there as well. I'm back on this table tonight. Yesterday I fixed up the, I did the framework, of course the X spots and all those things there. Got the top, ready to put the top and the middle slats on. These are 1x4s. What I'm doing is I had to cut them all to size to fit in the frame. They just lay on top of the supports here. But sometimes when I lay these things out, I like to start down at the end, right down this way here. Then when I get to this end, sometimes the board would have to be cut a little bit because the space here is narrower than these spaces here. So sometimes I'll use the middle cut instead to make it look even. But I took one tonight, just sort of edged off the edge of it just a little bit with the table saw, just to see, and then try to bring it over here and piece it back and forth and move it back and forth. But luckily, on the first cut, this hardly ever happens. But luckily, on the very first cut, it fits in perfect. So it fits all the way in there perfect on the very first cut. So I got lucky tonight. I like when that happens. So now what I need to do next is instead of getting ready to stain and nail these down, I'm gonna go ahead and make the top with a 2x6s and come across here, and I'm gonna have to join them together with the pocket hole screws. These don't need to be jointed down here because I just rad nailed those in. But that's what I'm gonna do now before I start sanding this bottom, sanding these pieces. This is gonna be stained Jacobine. The top's gonna be stained Jacobine. The frame's gonna be painted black. So I'm gonna go ahead with the start on the top now. Let's junk out of the way so I can show you what I did. All right, this is the top. Right here. Luckily, with my DeWalt, my new DeWalt table saw, put my glasses on so I can see what I'm talking about. Luckily, it gave me a good edge when I get ready to butt these two top pieces together. It's a good, pretty smooth, good line there, no gap. So usually if it's not, I'll run it through my joiner, my wind joiner. But luckily through the DeWalt table saw, I was able to get it nice and level and straight. So pieces together really well. So next, and I went ahead and sanded it down with the 60 grit sandpaper, and I'm gonna go over it with the 120 grit now to get all the roughness parts out. But what I'll do is these corners here, I'll get my router. Once I get the top piece together with pocket hole screws, I'll route the top around here, round over that rough edge, and then I'll before I start staining this, right there's like a knot, not a hole or anything, but it's like a little rough area that could possibly chip out and form to a hole. So what I do with that is I get my wood putty from Minwax, from Lowe's Minwax. Same colors as stain I'm going to be using, so it'll match real well. So what I'll do is I'll take this putty, which is brand new, so take aluminum off. I'll take this putty here and I'll just get a little ball of it, and I'll rub it in that joint there. I'll rub it in that little knot there. Get it nice and down in that little hole. Make it look better once it gets stained and stuff. So so right there's what it looks like after I get that little knot, that rough part. So then I get my little piece of 120 grit sandpaper and I'll just rub over it just to smooth it out. Then it comes out like that. You can't really tell there's actually a little dip there, nothing. I mean, by the time I get ready to put the free stain on, by the time I patch these pieces together or pocket hole these pieces together, that little patch right there will be dry, that putty will be dried. So I get ready to put the free stain on it, it'll be nice and dry. So that just completely covers up that little rough spot of that knot. So and then I do the bottom. These are the bottom slats. Of course, I did a 60 over these also. I'll do a 120 now. What I do on these is I like to the part that's going to be the top of the table, I like to sort of round it over with the 60 grit sandpaper on the palm sander, and it gets it rounded over so it won't be a sharp edge like on the bottom. This bottom won't be a factor because it'll be up against the frame. So I rounded that over. So the bottom slats are ready. I'm fixing to pocket hole this top together. Now the pocket hole screws, got my pocket hole bit already on there. And what I'd like to do now is oh, that's already set. This is just a cheap pocket hole. Well, it wasn't cheap. It was like about $70, but got this from Harbor Freight. They sell them a lot better than this, but this one is just perfectly fine. It works. I've had this for years. It's worked perfectly fine. So I already know what part I'm gonna have for my top because it's already sanded, and I'll go right down the middle here with some pocket hole screws, with some pocket holes. In the middle, and I put about one on the end. What I do now, got my pocket holes in there, ready to put some screws in. So what I'll do now is I'll flip this piece over, and the piece that's gonna butt up against it. Get some glue on it. This is an 18 by 18 top, so wasn't that big. I've made bigger than this before with coffee tables and things. And I got some glue in that joint now. This is from my glue bot I got off Amazon also. I like it a lot better than a glue gun. So what I'll do now is I'll get it, I'm gonna clamp it with my Jorgensen clamps. They come from Lowe's. Get that. I don't want to tighten it too much because it'll tend to buckle in the middle. So I just kind of tighten it enough that where the glue can catch. And then I'm gonna get my I don't know exactly what you call this thing, but I'm gonna get my clamp. I call it a clamp. It looks like a clamp. I'm gonna clamp it right here on the end. Keep this sort of level when I get ready to screw it in. Now, pop that in there and it gets it nice and level. Take my other drill, pocket hole screws, which is not my pocket hole screws. Pocket hole screws right here. I'm gonna pop them into these holes. So I want to make sure it's clamped so this board will be on the other side. It'll be nice and smooth. So I'm going to clamp that joint to bring the boards together. Then I can screw it back in there. That's no big deal. I do this all the time for some reason. All right. Now that's done. Clamps off. Flip it back over. And there it is right there. Nice and smooth. Joints really hidden really well. Nice and smooth there. So I'll go over this with 120 grit sandpaper and then I'll route it with a round over bit. And then I'll put some pre-stain on it. So that's pretty much how I do my tops. And sometimes with the glue, sometimes there'll be some squeeze out. And thinking about the glue, so if you don't get it cleaned up on the squeeze out, then it'll basically bleed right through the stain. So it doesn't, it's like, it'll just make the stain, you can see the wood, and it doesn't cover glue. The stain don't. So I'll get the 20 grit sandpaper, the 60 grit, and I'll run it back over this thing and knock all that glue off that maybe from squeeze out. I don't feel any on there now, but I'll do it just anyway, just in case. All right, get ready to put a round over on this table. Top here. Just basically get my Ryobi router. Router. And I'll run this along the edge here with a round over bit. Alright, got the nice round over on it now, so what I can do now is I can sand it with the 120 grit sandpaper now that's got everything rounded over, and that router makes a freaking mess. Right, got my top sanded, got the boards sanded, the bottom boards. They'll be ready for staining now. So I'm pretty much finished with the tops and the bottoms, so I'll just stain next. So now I'll move to the frame itself. What I'll do now is all the joints here, I'll caulk all these on the insides and outs. Caulk all the places that need to be caulked along the edges here. And let that dry, and then I'll put the white primer on it, and then I'll go back over it with the black paint, probably 2 coats. So that's pretty much all I'm going to do with this tonight probably. So I'll start back tomorrow. I'll stain the tops and the bottom, and I'll stain all that before I put it onto the table itself, because it's easier to do that, because the main reason I like to do that is to get these things stained on all the way on the tops and on the sides, because when you join them together, you don't want any kind of separation later on to show the bare wood. So I stain on this edge, that edge, the top, and all the way around, just to make sure that don't happen.